Okay, good evening, everyone. Tonight is the February 10th, 2021 Community Consolidated School District 46. We're here at front of the school due to space concerns or lack of space at GMS. This is our first meeting where we've been able to have people on site in a little while, and part of the reason why we're here is the space we normally use over at GMS. Part of it is being used by the food service program to get food out to the kids for their lunches and that. So they've taken up some of that room, so we had to go over here for space. Tonight we have two board members online, Stephen Strack and Christy Miller, while Dr. Mack and I are on site. Dr. Blueprint is joining us remotely as well, and Dr. Lewis is joining us at board. So first I need a call to order and roll call.
Beekman?
Here.
Mack?
Here.
Braden?
Great. Great.
Miller?
Here.
Pratt?
Here. Okay, that gives us a quorum. And we stand for the pledge of allegiance. To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, I need approval for the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Miller?
Aye.
Pratt?
Aye.
Beekman?
Aye.
And Mack?
Aye. All right, next on the agenda is public comments. Nicola Case.
No, you don't want to.
Hello, my name is Nikki Case, and I have two children. My son Braden is in seventh grade at GMS, and Brittany is in second grade at Adams. 335 days is how many days my kids have not been in school. Days is how many days my children have not been in school. 335 days is unacceptable. We should have the choice to go back to school full-time since the teachers have the opportunity to get the vaccine. 2 days hybrid is not enough for my children and the children in our community. My children are not accelerating except academically and are not happy. My son, Braden, was a straight A student. He is now receiving D's and F's. He is struggling, and it breaks my heart because his life has changed dramatically. My daughter just started doing tutoring classes. This board keeps changing their minds and keeps moving the goalposts. Last month, I heard a lot of shaming of our town and local restaurants from our board members for going out and safely supporting our local businesses. You also shamed our community for going on vacations. I heard from another board member that they just will go along with what everyone else wants. This is unacceptable. Last week, my family, including my children, did a tour at St. Gilbert. We have decided because of the board and the lack of planning, we will not be back at District 46 next year. My children will be going to a private school that has a great plan in place, and it works for our children. My children will be in school full-time, and I'm sick of you guys not putting my children and the children first. Shame on you. Thank you.
Is it Kenny or Kelly?
Will there be comments at the end?
There will be a public comment section at the end. We'll wait to the end. Ms. Bean?
So, my name's Colby. I have a prop here because this is the sixth computer that my son has had since the beginning of January. So let me paint a little picture for you. My family lives 2 blocks from Meadowview. My kids play at the playground. They play on the baseball field. They play on basketball. They ride their bikes and their scooters in the parking lot. And yet, today, after 335 days, they still haven't even stepped foot into that building. We live 5 minutes away. You know, January 2021 hit, and like I said, this is the 6th computer my son has had. Imagine a happy, fairly happy-go-lucky kid who loves to be in school, wants to be taught, loves to learn new things. It gets up every morning excited to go to school. And in January, it's been 4 weeks, over 4 weeks, since my son has attended his class. 4 weeks. I've spent anywhere from 1 to 2 hours every single morning trying to figure out, working with the tech department, working with other people within the district to try to figure out what's going on, and there's been no solution. Basically, I was also told, right, that there's been things that you guys have done to help me that you don't normally do. Well, I'm pretty sure that this school year hasn't been normal, right? So I have a son who now has headaches and tummy aches every day, doesn't want to get up, doesn't want to do anything, doesn't even want to do the things that his teacher wants him to do because he hasn't been in school. I had to make the decision to make basically sort of a demand that what time it starts, that he's in class 4 days a week. Because otherwise, he's not learning. I can't get him to go to school. It's very sad. We've sat in a lot of these board meetings, as Nicholas said, a lot of us sat in the board meeting at the end of December, beginning of January, where there were members of the community that shamed those of us around going out and doing things. So basically, I'm asking you, am I telling my 8-year-old son who wants to be in school, who can't attend class, that it's up to him to worry about everybody else in the community and what they're doing in order for him to come into school? Not acceptable. He begs me every single day right now to go to Westlake. And like other members of this community, if we don't go back full-time in the fall, we also will be following our kids and they'll be going to Westlake full-time. You can have this back.
Ashley said you want to talk at the end too. Here again.
Good evening. As a fellow educator in Lake County, I first want to extend a sincere thank you to our teachers, staff, and admin in District 46. As we approach the 1-year mark of this pandemic, we are all feeling the exhaustion of flipping our teaching and work practices upside down. Thank you for your continued effort to revise plans, provide the best attempts of student engagement, and most importantly, be open for change. I work in a neighboring district who successfully started hybrid learning last month. It was an adjustment for students and staff alike, but for the students who attend in person, I can honestly say it's making a world of a difference for them to come to school. But the key part was taking that first step towards change. Change is hard, but an important part of walking towards a new normal. My one challenge for our admin team in District 46 is to continue to evaluate the amount of students who choose hybrid learning to see if they actually come to school during hybrid learning days. What we found in my district that I work in is that the students who selected hybrid learning were not actually coming on the days and were remaining in remote learning, thus leaving their numbers lower for our percentages, which we are all very concerned about. Our admin team was diligent in tracking the students that were coming for attendance. And in a matter of 4 weeks, we moved from an ABCD model with 4 different rotations of students coming in to an AB model that we will be starting next Tuesday in a matter of 4 weeks. So I encourage you and challenge you to continually reflect and monitor the students that are coming to school, because if our numbers are low enough, we should be able to move from an AB rotation to having all hybrid students go 4 days a week, if the numbers permit. I do want to say that our goal is to get students back into the building in any capacity. So I thank the board and the administration for keeping to their timeline of starting hybrid learning next Tuesday. But our work is not done. If students are not attending hybrid as indicated on the survey, I encourage you to assess that within 2 weeks' time from Tuesday to see if you need to send an additional survey, as we did in our district, to confirm their hybrid or remote status. Our personal support staff and administration worked tirelessly to make sure that our numbers were safe for all students and teachers alike. Our goal now is to get students in the building. And with phase 4 that we just entered last week, it's a 50% ratio, which should allow more students into the building. Thank you for your time and continued work in best serving our students in District 46.
Thank you.
Come on back, Jen.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. All right. So hi, everybody. So I actually wrote this because I probably am going to cry because I want you guys to realize this, right? So Jim, I appreciate everything that you have done, and I appreciate you and Lynn listening to my emails all year. So let me tell you a really personal thing that's happened over the past week. So last week, so I stand here tonight to tell you a personal experience I had the last week that I will never ever forget. We made the incredible hard decision to pull our fourth grader from Meadowview. Let me be really clear, this is not because of his teacher. Our 8th grade daughter had his teacher, and she was amazing. We touched base with her back in November about the challenges with what our son was experiencing. We adapted, we tried to make sure he had his camera. Fast forward to last week. On Tuesday at 12:25, I was on a conference call in the middle of the mid-year review with my team member that had just lost his father to COVID. My internet goes down. I walk upstairs and I find my daughter panicking because she's missing math class. And Gavin, my son, Mom, internet's not working. I sit on our steps in the foyer and I turn my hotspot on my phone. Dakota's doing math class in the office. Gavin's in the living room trying to do math with his teacher, and I'm on a conference call with my team in the UK. About 20 minutes into troubleshooting and listening, trying to have Dakota listen to her math teacher and have Gavin in the living room, trying to get online. My 9-year-old son walks over and says, Mom, I think I know what the issue is. He walks into our office and he finds the router to our internet completely unplugged. I looked at him, angered, beside myself. I looked at him and said, Gavin, did you unplug that? The look on his face and the tears coming down his eyes. I just can't learn and sit in front of the computer anymore. It was then when I realized that we were failing our son. Not only failing our son, but also failing the community of not actually speaking up. So when I had an opportunity that afternoon, I called St. Gilbert's, an absolute mess. Not able to speak, I couldn't make a decision fast enough. Found out that they still had the opening that they had in November and asked if we could actually do everything to have our son start on Monday. After we got confirmation that he was able to join, Tuesday night, the little twilight, the little sparkle of my 9-year-old son quiet was back. And I'm not sitting up here here telling you guys that I want you to feel sorry for me, right? We have the means and we're able to send our son to St. Gilbert's. There are a lot of families that are suffering and children in this community. So as I raise my kids, and I stand here knowing that my daughter is leaving this district in 120 days as she goes on to high school, and we do have, we could, right, stay at St. Gilbert's for the next 4 years. I would not be a good example for my children to actually just turn away and say, I'm just gonna worry about me. We've always raised our kids to say we should do bigger and better things, and we should stand up for the right thing. So I'm asking you guys, please think about the kids who may not be crying, but they're struggling, right? For a 9-year-old boy to unplug the router of my internet, that was a desperate action, right? So I do. I appreciate, again, right, and I've stood here years and years, right, on support of our teachers. I think the one thing that I would ask you guys is, since August, we've heard, you guys want us back, Lynn developed a plan. And for the past 4 months, we've heard about safety, right, safety of the teachers. But the one thing that I would ask all of you guys, have you guys actually asked the teachers, right, not the ones that are squeaking? Like, have you done a survey to say, why do you not want to come back? Maybe the reason they don't want to come back is because they don't want to do in-person and hybrid or remote at the same time, right? Because you're asking them to do 2 jobs. The more and more I try to step back and think about this, why would a teacher that chose this profession choose not to go back to school? Yes, there are people that have safety issues or safety concerns. But maybe it's because we as a district failed them back in August and didn't plan appropriately. So I ask you guys to think about that as you go forward and think about all the children that this district might lose because of the poor planning and the lack of leadership that this board has actually represented. Thank you.
Thank you. Next would be, okay, go ahead.
So we have 2 comments from the online public comments. So 2 that have names, one is anonymous. So the first one is from Diane Von Gosselaar, and I apologize if I messed up anyone's name. In reviewing the agenda for tonight's board meeting, I noticed the absence of anything on the agenda specifically pertaining to full reopening of schools to in-person education. It is an erroneous oversight to leave off the agenda the biggest item on parents' minds. Fundamentally, the question is, are schools that implemented appropriate mitigation strategies able to fully open in person without causing a COVID-19 outbreak? The science has been crystal clear on the answer to that question. The largest database curated by Brown University continues to compile data from across the country. As of this month, based on the data for over 4 million students and 1.2 million staff members with in-person learning, the infection rate for students is 0.4% and for staff is 0.7%. These numbers will only decline as vaccines become more available. I encourage everyone to explore this dashboard to see what mitigation efforts have made the biggest impact of spreading and what mitigation efforts have not made a difference. It is time to start following the science and the experts. The current hybrid plan, although a good first step, is not sustainable for working families and students' education. Your change should be to grow the current plan of hybrid learning with the ultimate goal of full days of in-person instruction. Please be aggressive, relentless, adaptable, and proactive in making plans to increase the amount of in-person learning. This is the expectation of the community and the intent of what our tax dollars are supporting. And then the next one is from Jennifer Anderson. Being that the Center of Disease Control is now recommending that all individuals wear not 1 but 2 masks Will you be following the CDC guidelines and require all students and staff wear at least 2 masks in the building to prevent the spread of this deadly disease? There's a few more that came. Ashley Moore says, please let us know what your plan is for fall. If there is no plan for a full group return, I would like to know so I can start the process of keeping my child at safe children. The next one is an anonymous one. And the next one, Ashley Moore. The fact that pre-K is only going back for 1.5 day is pointless. Please reconsider.
Okay, just as a reminder too, for public comments that are coming in online, we started the process a few weeks ago that any public comments need to have, or online need to have a valid email address and name to them. We're no longer going to be reading the anonymous public comments. Okay, next will be board reports. Does anybody have? Sure, just could you come up and put your name on the list real quick? Name and email, please. Thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to speak and for taking the time to listen. Thank you for serving our community countless hours, and thank you for trying to do the right thing. Like most of our community, I was thrilled this summer that our superintendent was giving us a choice for full remote or full in person. And it seems like the percentage of teachers wanting remote aligned well with the students wanting remote. I was so disappointed when that choice was taken away. At that time, I chose to provide the majority of my child's education privately. I'm fully aware that I'm in a unique position to have that choice. My choice is a privilege. So I don't speak on behalf of myself, I'm speaking on behalf of many citizens who don't have that choice. The last board meeting that I listened to, 2 or 3 board members said that they were not interested in what other schools or districts were doing for remote versus in person. And I continue to hear the phrase, follow the science. No, I am not a scientist. In fact, I'm actually a certified public accountant. But in my science classes, I learned that the scientific process is, that in the scientific process, an important step is observation. I've been observing our community for about 11 months now, as many of us have. And I see that just over a mile from here stand 2 schools, one pre-K to 12 and one K through 8. Both have been open full-time in person, the option of full-time in person, since August. And no one has died. As far as I know, no one has even been hospitalized. Of course, at both schools, people have come down with COVID, but it didn't devastate those schools. They had plans, and they carried them out, and the plans worked. I'm just curious, I don't know the answer to this question, if any of you have taken the time to do observation and research and see how these schools are in our own community are doing this. One of the schools is in a very old building that used to belong to District 46. And I know that they survive on a shoestring budget. And I am certain that they did not receive $900,000 from our federal government for COVID relief. So how are they doing that? Have you called the principals of these schools? A little farther away is a public school in Libertyville called Oak Grove. And they've been open, they've given people the option of being in person all school year. Has anyone called their principal to see how they're doing it?
This is all observation and research, and it's part of the scientific process in following the science. Perhaps I understand you are all very busy and that you haven't had time, but I would implore you to not spend time and money on a consultant working on a mission statement and a 5-year plan. Instead, I believe that your mission right now should be to get our students in school full-time as soon as possible. I, like so many others, have paid taxes in this community, mostly, honestly, for the sake of others, not myself or my children. And I do this because I believe in the importance and the value of educating our society as a whole. So I ask you, for the sake of our children, for the sake of their education, for the sake of their safety, for the sake of their mental health, and for our community as a whole, to please give our students and families a choice to go back to school, not in hybrid, but full-time, and allow activities like band and sports. I just took a tour of a school nearby here today, and they've had band all year. They're doing sports. You can do this. I know you can. You just need to follow the examples that have already been set for you. Thank you.
Okay. I'll move on to board reports. Christy Miller, do you have anything to report?
I just wanted to highlight the Grays Lake Village's newsletter. Brett Taylor, our mayor, highlighted many of the sustainability efforts that have taken place since the 1980s, actually. And the most exciting part of that letter that I read and I thought was salient for us is that Grays Lake, if you've not seen, has been identified as the location for a pilot bike share program. So those bike hubs will be available to all of our students in the spring, which is pretty exciting. And it's a partnership between CLC, the library district, and the park district, which I think is a great use of taxpayer funds. So just a bright spot from the village board. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Stephen Strath, do you have anything to report?
I do not.
Okay. Next will be the superintendent report.
Good evening. We will start with Mr. Lewis, who will be talking with us about our remote learning day that we had recently and our upcoming Institute Day.
So thank you for that. I wanted to share a little bit of information about our remote learning planning day that was last Friday, February 5th. So this was the day for staff to have more time to be prepared for the on-site. So we had staff meetings and trainings for a portion of the day to prepare for the on-site and the hybrid learning options. We had a lot of tech setup, all the classroom setups, all of being prepared. We had support from our tech team throughout that day. We also had some additional Safe Center trainings. So Safe Center is in this building. This started just yesterday, and so we had some training about that. And then also that day included team and individual planning. So it was a very busy day for staff. I also wanted to share about our Institute Day that has been on our calendar all year. So we have a half day on this Friday. And so the half day, we're going to be offering 3 different choice sections for our teachers to pick from. Some of them will be pre-recorded webinars and presentations that we have made. And they're specific to some of the issues that teachers were looking for. So either reading or technology or grouping strategies, all those kind of things. We also will have some live sessions. We have some trainers from outside of the district, someone from our ROE, our Regional Office of Education, and 2 people from some of the resources that we use, from Reading A to Z and from Edpuzzle. So we have a variety of different topics being presented there. We also have some in-district personnel who are going to be doing some live sessions, live as in remote on the computer. We're going to be working on assessment procedures, some tech support, and we're also even adding some personal fitness classes into the day to think about the mental health of our staff. So we have a wide variety. We also, since it's choice, there'll be time for some last minute planning or organization for the on-site students who will be starting the next week. And then also on that day is an important part because it's also our packet pickup for our students who are fully remote. So we'll have materials, print materials and supplies ready for parents to pick up on that day as well. So we'll have lots of different moving parts as part of that Institute Day on February 12th.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lewis. I will move into talking about our efforts to make sure that our staff have opportunities to be vaccinated. Just wanted to give you a little update about that. So we've been working with our surrounding Lake County School District neighbors to provide vaccines in 2 what are called closed pods. One is at Round Lake High School, one is at Stevenson High School. And those are sites that are specifically for educational staff. As of this afternoon, over 160 of our staff members either have had their first round of vaccine or they have a vaccine scheduled for sometime later this week. So that's about 30% of our staff. I'll be honest with you, we had certainly hoped that by now we would have a larger percentage of our staff through with the first vaccine, but there's a limit to what we control regarding that. And certainly, and the limit really has to do with availability of the vaccines. Lake County Health Department assures us that more shots are coming. And so we are very hopeful that in the next 2 weeks, the rest of our staff will be able to get their first dose. And I will also share regarding that staff members that have had the opportunity to get the vaccine have remarked how very smooth the process has been. And I'm also glad to share that a number of our administrators have volunteered to and are signed up to go over to Round Lake High School to do some traffic control and a shift so that we can support the process over there. So that's what I have to share about our vaccines. And now I want to move into new information, and I'm thinking about this in context with some of our speakers talked about today. We had a number of people through public comment talk about how information continues to evolve, and indeed it does. 2 brand new pieces of information came as recently as today. So the first one has to do with travel. Comes under the heading of restrictions. It's not really restrictions, it's really related to quarantining after travel. We have repeatedly been asked whether we have any restrictions, and the answer that we have been giving is no restrictions have been specifically shared with us, and we are following the guidance that we're receiving. As recently as today, we received new information. The envelope is that the Lake County Health Department is strongly recommending quarantining, specifically for international travel. They're recommending a 10-day quarantine after international travel and testing 5 to 7 days following the travel. They're also making a recommendation about domestic travel. That recommendation, similar to international travel, is a 10-day quarantine, but it's specific to if a person is traveling by airplane, bus, train, ship, something a person doesn't control themselves. And they've stated that if somebody is traveling by car, if they are following the 3 W's that we keep talking about, then they wouldn't necessarily be taking this. This information came today. It is the talk of Lake County amongst school districts. And I will be very honest with you, we haven't had time to have the conversations we need to have about what this means, how strong the recommendation is it a recommendation, is it a requirement? These are conversations we need to have, and we try very hard not to come out with a strong statement until we considered exactly what it means. So, or really, I just wanted to let you know that this is a conversation that we're going to be having as a school district, and more information to come. I guess I'll pause there. I just want to know if any of my board members have any questions about that. Okay,
Are there any limitations around whether the layer of vaccines and vaccination, is that part of that recommendation or no?
so today's information from the Lake County Health Department was that its recommendation is not lifted if somebody has gotten vaccines. Okay, the reason I say today's information is that over dinner tonight, my husband said to me, hey, did you hear what the CDC said today? And that had to do with vaccines and other things, right? So information is developing so quickly, and we're all trying to understand our needs. So that's a great question. The answer today is that no, it doesn't matter if somebody has the vaccine or not. But that's one of the reasons why we are trying not to move too quickly on something, because we just don't know if it might all change again in a day. Yeah. Welcome. The other new information came about 2 hours before the board meeting. So this has to do with on-site board meetings. Board, you know that we communicate with each other and agreed that we would have an on-site board meeting tonight. And that based on the recommendation from our law firm, we could have 25 people in the space, and that would include the people sitting in the public, board members, administrators on site. It could be 25 people. About 2 hours before the board meeting, we received new information from our attorney that let us know that on February 5th, the governor issued a new disaster proclamation in which he found that for purposes of the Open Meetings Act, and of course we're all under the Open Meetings Act, a gathering of more than 10 people at a regular meeting location is not feasible. So, plain language, the governor said you shouldn't have a meeting of more than 10 people. Our attorney then went on to say, however, the board can disagree with the governor and decide to continue to have meetings that are larger than 10 people. And if the board chooses to do that, it's not 25 people, which is what we thought yesterday, but it's actually 50. Which is actually why I was wanting to know, was warning that I want to make sure we had enough seats in our space today for all of the people who wanted to come to the meeting, and I understand from Mr. Newman we did. This was not on our board agenda as a discussion item because it came 2 hours ago, 2.5 at this point. So I'm not suggesting we engage in discussion about it, and instead would ask that board members individually communicate with me about your thoughts about whether we should not have on-site board meetings for a while, if we should have them, but limited to 10 people in total, which would likely mean a continuation of some administrators on site, some off-site, some board members on site, some off-site, and frankly, likely no space for public at all. Or if we should have 50 people. So, does anyone have any questions about what I'm asking you to give me feedback on?
No, did the lawyer give us a email that explained all that?
Yes, well, it's very much what I just said, but I will forward it to you.
Yeah, I was just thinking, if you forward it to all the board members, then
Okay.
kind of digest it, look at it.
Absolutely. Okay, all right, and that is it for the superintendent's report. Lots more to share later in the meeting, but that's it for the report. That part.
Okay. Next is the committee reports. First is Community Engagement Committee.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. So just 2 quick announcements. The first is that, as we mentioned at the last meeting, our committee has committed to support the Avon Cares food pantry. And I just wanted to put on your radar that the next food will be collected March 27th and 28th, which is a date that the food pantry suggested because they have highest need that, or a higher need that week. And again, just want to recognize Patricia Baking from Park and Allison Coke, who is actually does not have children in the district right now, they have spearheaded this, but our entire committee has committed to supporting it in one way or another. So that's just happy news. We know that people are hungry and that they need to be fed, and our committee has rallied around the Avon Township Food Pantry, and will continue to, again, March 27th and 28th. Food can be dropped off between 10 and 4, and locations are to be determined. We'll be sure to announce that at the next meeting. So, and the second is that our committee has decided to pursue Dare to Lead training. If you remember, we had talked about doing that in the fall. It didn't work out for various reasons, but we have 2 to 3 spots that are open. So if anyone is interested in joining us, it's free to us, and our facilitator has indicated that we can have up to 8 people. So we have, again, 2 to 3 spots open if anyone is interested in joining us. And that's it for the community engagement, unless I missed anything, Steven. Did I want to add anything? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is the Equity and Inclusion Committee.
So that's me. I was just asked to share a little bit. We haven't had a meeting since our last board meeting when we gave our last report, but we do have a meeting scheduled for February 22nd. And one of the topics that we're working on is recognition of celebrating a diverse nation of readers, celebrating a diverse nation of readers, celebrating a nation of diverse readers. I apologize for that. A program that we're looking for in March. So we're actively working on that.
Next, we'll move on to the consent agenda. We have motion to approve the consent agenda, including the addendum to the personnel report. So moved.
Second.
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Newton.
Aye. Now we're to action items. The only action item we have tonight is motion to approve Chris Wildman as the Assistant Superintendent of Finance. For those that are tenants that listen online, we have been working with interim CSDOs for the school district for a little over a year. So we went through a hiring process to hire a new CSDO on a full-time basis. And the process went through the administrative staff, with Dr. Glickman, and interviewed with the board as well. And the person that they selected is Christopher Wildman. We have motion to approve this contract. So moved.
Second.
Weedman,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
and Strack.
Aye.
Okay, next would be.
Congratulations.
Actually, Chris,
He's on my screen.
He's here, he's on our screen.
Okay, so we do have Mr. Wildman with us. I invited him to come to this meeting remotely rather than being on site, so we have as much space as possible for public on site, and because we only needed him for a small portion of the meeting. But we just wanted to have everyone to see a face, to look the name, and Mr. Wildman, we'd love just for you to say a few words.
Absolutely. I am honored and humbled to be joining your dynamic leadership team, Dr. Glickman, and start a new chapter in my own leadership journey with Grace Lake 46. I'm excited to be working with all members of the district. I'm also honored and humbled to be your first superintendent of finance, and I'm deeply looking forward to the challenges we face together as an educational community with all stakeholders. So I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, from all my family, thank you very much.
We're so glad you're with us, Mr. Wildman, and I will comment that although this is in no way the most important part of you, because everyone is meeting you for the first time and they're going to ask, where did that accent come from?
Oh, I'm originally from the United Kingdom. I immigrated here in 2006. and I've been a CSBO for about 10 years, so Richard from the United Kingdom. Thank you.
I mean, I just figured we'd get that out of the way. Well, welcome, we're so glad you'll be with us, and board and public, I will share with you that we're already in conversation with Mr. Wildman about all the different ways that we can include him in our planning for the future. But with that, I know you have a full day of work ahead of you tomorrow in your current school district, so I know you and I will be talking tomorrow, but have a good evening. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Welcome, Chris.
Okay, so we're now on to new business. First one is Title III programmatic recommendations.
All right, and we're going to hear from Dr. Stephanie Diaz. I know she has some slides that I think Mr. Vipond is going to be putting online up for us. While we're waiting for that, I guess while we're just riffing for a moment, I'm calling in Mr. Vipond. We have Mr. Woke and we have Mr. Wildman. What we really have are three members of our cabinet team whose name is Chris. So we're going to have to work our way through that.
All right. Good evening, and thank you all very much for your time tonight. I have a brief presentation that explains the audit findings and the recommended program changes. I will respectfully ask if you could please hold questions just till the end of the presentation. I would just appreciate that. And then before I speak about what we learned or where we were going, I wanted to just take a moment and talk about where we are. Slide, please. So for current demographics, we have 637 active EL students in pre-K through 8th grade. This number does not include our parent refusal, so it would be a little bit higher if we included everyone. We have 45 newcomers, and they come from 18 different countries. And a newcomer is defined by the Illinois State Board of Education as a student who has been in the country for less than 3 years. Okay. In our languages, we have 38 languages represented in our 637 active ELs, but as a district, we have 64 languages represented. And what's really cool about that, or kind of fun to remember, is that Illinois has 164 languages, so we're just 100 languages away from a linguistic representation of the entire state. And that's kind of fun. And then we have a one-way dual language Spanish program offered in pre-K through 6th grade, and I will in a couple of slides go into a little bit more detail about the one-way dual language program. Slide, please. This is our chart of our high incidence languages. And so we have our top 7 languages, so English is always first, and then we have our other 5. And then we have the number of speakers who in the entire district who speak that. So for example, we're looking at Spanish, and we have 901 Spanish speakers. And I just said in the previous slide that we have 637 ELs. Something does not exactly compute, right? So those are the students who are in our program, but out of our entire, just under 4,000 students population, 901 speak Spanish. Okay? And then our languages go to Tagalog, Polish, Russian, Hindi, and Gujarati. And what's kind of fun about this too is that even just in the past 5 years, the languages and even the number of speakers have changed quite a bit. And it's very neat to see how GraceLink is growing and then how our program grows along with it. So, slide please. So we're going to move into kind of what we learned. And title programs are audited on a 5-year rotation. So we just finished our full cycle. And 3 big things came out of that. The first one is that we are asked to provide authentic materials in high incidence languages. We also have learned that interpretation and translation certification is going to change a little bit, and ISD is going to provide a program starting probably January of next year. And most likely, I can come back and speak more about the translation and interpretation program when we know more about it, but just something to think about in the future. And then we have our one-way dual language Spanish program expansion. Slide, please. So if we just go back to that first one where we have authentic languages, something that's new in Illinois State Code is that we are now required to support literacy and literature through a whole bunch of materials in our top 7 languages. So our languages were on that chart that's new and good for GraceLink, right? but this is a code or a law that is for all of ISB. So there are many publishers who have already started to work on this charge and have started to accumulate and acquire different types of age-appropriate literature in the state's top 7 to 10 languages. So then that would include Arabic and Serbian and a couple of others. So we have 2 viable options and 2 avenues which we are marching down to try to accumulate and acquire our own materials. One of them is to use, tap into our own resources with our sub-certified translator and interpreters. I have provided them with a criterion of what an age-appropriate book looks like at the different grade levels. And if they were to go to their home country or just have some connections, they have asked them if they could please look up some materials for us. And then, of course, work with publishers such as like CPI's Classic. There are many who've taken on this charge and already have a lot of different types of materials that are curriculum, literacy, authentically translated that they're ready to share with us. Slide, please. And then if we head into the recommendations regarding programming, we have a one-way dual language Spanish program. And just basically what that means is that we have students who start in pre-K and go all the way up through 6th grade who all speak Spanish at home. So they're simultaneous bilinguals. They're learning Spanish and English at the same time. They're kind of a cohort. They do have interaction with other grades, but they predominantly stay together and they move through all of the academic years so that they could foster bilingualism, biculturalism, and become biliterate students. And the hope is that when they get to the high school, they can qualify for the seal of biliteracy and then go on to their college or career readiness with that seal on their diploma. Really significant, really signifies, that they are bilingual and biliterate. So that is our hope. And again, we have that in Spanish. So there are 2 points that are on the slide that talk about school code. And we have that magic number of 20. So you may remember that the school code states that if you have a center or an attendance center or a school that has 20 students who speak the same language, we automatically need to implement a bilingual program. So it is a pretty enthusiasm, a lot of enthusiasm, to let you know that all of our attendance centers have met the minimum number of 20. So we've all had that magic number, and we are now asked by the state to then implement a bilingual or one-way dual language class in all of our attendance centers. In our case, again, Spanish. The other piece is a new piece of code that will go, that's already written into the state code, but new from last year, where it states that students who are Spanish speakers, but they might be learning in English, and they have scored less than a 3.4 on the access test, must work with a certified bilingual teacher. And if we just take a moment to talk about the access test, this is that English proficiency exam that we typically take in January, but this year might be a little bit different. And it has a scale of 1.0, which is emerging English, to 6.0, which is basically as fluent in English as you will possibly become, and you're comparable with a native language English speaker. On the SCAPE test, you need a 4.8 to exit or become proficient in English. So they're saying, not quite at that 4.8, you're 3.4, we really want you to get that extra support. Slide, please. So then, on the next several slides, I have broken them down by school and wanted to kind of talk through Avon and Prairie View's graph, just so that everything's set up the same way to explain one of these, and then we can move through the other schools a little faster. Grade, I do completely believe is self-explanatory, but I do want to say that these numbers do not represent parent refusals. So if there is a school that has parent refusals, the numbers are not there because they're not currently being seen by an EL or teacher of record or bilingual teacher. Okay. Our first column is that one-way dual language class. So these are students who are learning in Spanish and English and becoming that bilingual, bicultural, moving all the way up. And they, of course, they're Spanish speakers, right? But that is different from this next column, which are students who are receiving EL services or English learner, English as a new language service, and they speak Spanish, but they're not in the one-way dual language program. Okay. So then we have a term that you may be familiar with. It's called LOTES, and it stands for languages other than English and Spanish. So these are students who speak any one of our other, 60-30 languages, not Spanish, and how many students are receiving services. And then we have a teacher of record, and that used to be like a traditional ESL teacher. But what we're finding is that as we're growing and students are growing, our students aren't necessarily learning English as a second language, right? They're learning their home language and English kind of simultaneous. So our program has shifted from just being like maybe like vocabulary or typical 30-minute sessions with grammar or syntax to more like, here's an English language development class, mixed in with your English language arts class. And then we have teacher of record, EL teachers who teach that. And then we have, if in any case there was a recommendation for a change of staffing, it would be in this last column. So we have, so we're just looking at Avon, and we go back to our one-way dual language class. So our students are in that cohort moving up. We have 13 in kinder, 17 in first, et cetera, right? So 72 students. And then the teacher of record, or the teacher as an English as a new language ELD, they have the number like 9 plus 1 is 10, so she has 10 kinders. And those are how the numbers add up and move across. Okay? The last thing that I wanted to say about the charts is that, as I know that you are aware or friendly reminder, if a student were to qualify for the EL, or the one-way dual language program, but they do not live inside Avon or Prairie View's boundaries, they were offered the program as long as transportation was provided by the parent or the family. So at Avon, we have one student whose homeschool is not Avon, but is in the one-way dual language program, and then is going to stay. Slide, please. And then we would move on to Prairie View. Again, the chart is exactly the same. I wanted to point out that Prairie View has 15 students who attend Prairie View in the one-way dual language program, but their homeschool is either usually Clark or Meadowview. And then here we do have a recommendation for a staff change, and it actually did not come out of the audit, it came out of high enrollment. So again, as a friendly reminder, Prairie View has multi-age for first and second in the one-way dual language are combined, and third and fourth are combined. But looking at the enrollment numbers moving up, it would provide a very, very high class. It would be 11 students move to second grade and 15 students move to first grade. So our hope and recommendation is to actually break apart the multi-age class and have a standalone first and a standalone second in the one-way dual language classroom. Slide, please. Thank you. And then at Woodview, we do not have currently a one-way dual language program, so the number is 0. But we do have 30 students who speak Spanish at home, or simultaneous Spanish-English learners, which is over the 20. So our recommendation is to have a one-way dual language kindergarten classroom with the hope and intent to move up through the years. A roll-up program, if you will. Slide, please. And then for Meadowview, the same thing. We have 22 Spanish speakers and 22 other languages. So then again, the same recommendation to have a one-way dual language starting in kinder. Last slide, please. And then at Frederick, these are just current numbers, but we do not have a recommendation for staffing change. We have the bilingual or one-way dual class made it to 6th grade this year, and then they would move to GMS next year. So last slide, please. So then for GMS, our recommendation is to have the one-way dual language for 7th grade, and then hopefully roll up till 8th grade the following year. But this would be part of the original roll-up. So this didn't come from the audit, this was just from 5 years ago where we were building up the EL, the one-way dual program. Thank you. Slide, please. And then we get to Park. So Park Campus East, historically they have had a lot of bilingual or one-way dual kinders who have ended up going to Prairie View. And so we feel very confident that they could hold up start their bilingual program there too. So for change in staffing would be a recommendation for a full-time equivalent dual language starting in kinder. And then for Park Campus West, there are no changes at this time, but you do have the current numbers if you wanted to study them further. So slide, please. And then I would slide 60, so like a summary of recommendations. Thank you very much. So just to kind of, in summation, we have audit recommendations for the one-way dual language staffing for Park, Campus East, Woodview, and Meadowview. And then the original roll-up would be having our one-way dual language program get to 7th grade. And then I did put in here that in case there weren't enough enrollment, or there weren't enough students to really sustain a kindergarten class, that multi-age for K-1 could be recommendation, as well as counting in that second piece to that code, where a Spanish teacher would be a bilingual certified teacher who also speaks Spanish, would work with students who have that 3.4 and access or below. Next slide, please. And then finally, we're continuing with the summary, would be to increase the one-way dual language due to enrollment at Prairie View, to again split up the multilanguage class. And then no change at Avon, Frederick, or Park. And then the last slide is just for questions. Anyone have any questions for me?
I have 2 questions for you.
Sure.
Parent refusal, can you explain that a little bit? Kind of get a general sense of it?
Yes, for sure. So parents, of course, have the right to say that no, they wouldn't like their child to be in a bilingual or one-way dual language classroom. And at Prairie View or at Avon, if they qualify for the bilingual class or the dual language class, and the parents say no, then we can offer going into that ELD teacher of record classroom. And typically, most parents are like, sure, that'd be good because I want to strengthen academics and syntax and all of that. But in the other schools where it's not offered, if a student or a parent were to refuse services, then they actually are not seen by the EL teacher at all.
Okay. And then the second question I had is, where does our top 7 languages sit versus others?
The only difference is that Arabic is running in 3rd, and so we have Gujarati instead of Arabic. Otherwise, they're very much in line. Sure.
Any other questions for Dr. Diaz?
Dr. Diaz, I'm just curious if you think this is a trend that will continue, and at what point might we want to offer bilingual education to all of our students, because it's so valuable in the marketplace, and like you said, it's aligned with my seal of biliteracy with District 127. It would be great for all of our kids to be bilingual at the end of their tenure with us.
I completely agree. I think that dual language is so beneficial for every student who is inside the classroom. And setting the pathways and having a strong one-way dual is usually the typical path, and making sure that that goes well and is strong, and then adding in the equivalent of English speakers to have that really nice transition to a two-way dual program.
So there is a two-way dual program. I think I remember talking about that with you earlier. Okay. Thank you.
We don't offer one at this time, but yes, that's.
Right, it's part of the model, but we don't have it yet.
Correct. One of the challenges that we face is the availability of hiring outstanding bilingual staff. And with the addition of additional bilingual staff for next year, we're already having conversations about how we're going to add in. Where are we going to find more bilingual staff? I know that Mr. Wolf will talk about that a little bit later when he talks about a staffing plan.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Dr. Diaz?
You distracted? Nope. Good. Thank you, Dr.
All right. Thank you so much. So the entirety of the rest of our new business topics are related to planning for the upcoming school year. We wanted to have Dr. Diaz start that conversation for us because a little bit later when Mr. Wolf talks about staffing, we wanted you to have the information that we will be adding in more bilingual staff and wanted to let you know why. But before we get to that, I will be sharing information with you about instructional format considerations for the next school year. Thank you, Mr. Redpine. You are right there with me. I know that you'll be following along. So this is a conversation that is very important in our school district right now, and one that you all heard about from a number of parents at the start of our board meeting. The question of what does next year look like? And that is a large question for our school district. And I think it's important to start talking about what's the goal. New slide, please. As we all know, we are currently in our remote setting, but next Tuesday, hybrid learning begins for our students. And that will, the intent is that will bring us to the end of the school year. But obviously, our goal is 5 full days of on-site learning for our students. And we are hoping very much that we'll be able to have that next year. What I'll be talking about right now is how we get there. And I'll be talking about it actually in the context of the planning that we've had to do for hybrid. And there are many, many unknowns. And I want to share right now what one of those unknowns is, which has to do with remote learning. So we have 51% of our students district-wide that are enrolled in hybrid learning, again, to begin next week. That is 49% of our students, the families have selected remote learning. One of the things that we don't know right now is whether the state will require school districts to continue offering remote learning for families that request it. We do not have that information, and I want you to be aware of that. Slide, please. All right, so how do we get to 5 days of five full days of learning? I want to start by talking about mitigation strategies. At our board meeting in January, we went through the whole list of recommended mitigation strategies. What is it that allows us to open up on-site at all, in our current case with hybrid, and to do it safely? And I want to share that many of those mitigation strategies also support the concept of 5 full days of on-site learning. So I'm talking about things like cleaning procedures that Mr. Halprin and his team have been working so hard on. I'm talking about mask wearing. I don't have a crystal ball, but so far we haven't heard anything that causes us to believe that mask wearing is going to be discontinued anytime soon. Contact tracing, staying home when ill, all of those things will help us open safely in hybrid and would support 5-day-a-week school. And then there's the 6-month distance requirement, and that's what we're going to be spending some time talking about tonight, because that is the hurdle that we are facing in terms of having our students on site 5 days a week. Earlier, I shared with you, new information that came today, and some of that information came from the Lake County Health Department meeting that I have every week. And so I had that meeting this morning, and we talked about that 6-foot distance requirement. And the Lake County Health Department talked with us about the fact that that requirement, that the actual 6 feet is not an arbitrary number, it's a number that's based on science. They pulled out slides, which I did not include here, having to do with how far particles pass and how it can be up to 6 feet. So there's a reason for that 6-foot distance requirement. Slide, please. So we're going to backtrack for a moment and get to our most up-to-date reality, because it will help you understand next year. I mentioned that 51% of our students are enrolled in a hybrid plan. And there's a range. It's not 51% in every school. The lowest enrollment right now is at Prairie View with 46% of the students enrolled in hybrid. The highest is over at Woodview with 55% enrolled in hybrid. And I do want to pause here because I so greatly appreciated our community member who spoke earlier this evening about her experiences in another school district and about how students didn't come on site. So absolutely, that is something that we will be paying attention to in our school district as well. I just wanted to pause and comment on that. But in any case, right now, what we have is what was enrolled, and it's 51%. Then we have our classroom capacity. So what does that mean? Back in the summer, and you may remember me talking about this, but it was a long time ago, we had our architects come on site and look at our rooms and do some figuring to identify how many desks we can fit into a classroom at any one time and keep our students 6 feet apart. And there's a range. So they came on and did that, and then guess what? We actually did it, right? So if you were to look at our classes right now, they all have desks. Those classrooms are completely emptied of everything else. There's no tables in there. It's just a teacher desk. Maybe some bookshelves that are like built in to the side, and 10, 11, 12, 13. There are classrooms over at Frederick that can fit 15. It just depends on the size of the room and the shape of the room, but desks spread apart. And they hover around, I have 13 here. I'm going to tell you that today I looked at it again. It's probably a little bit more than like 12. But again, there's a range from school to school. And then we looked at our current number of students who are enrolled in hybrid. And imagined, well, what would it mean if all of those students who were enrolled in hybrid actually were instead enrolled in a 5-day program? What if we were offering that right now? What do we really have room for? Well, here's the reality of it. Approximately half of the classrooms would be over capacity, and in some cases, significantly over capacity, if the students were instead on site for 5 days. So I want to give you an example of what that means. Let's take a random 3rd grade class in our school district, and let's use that 13 number. Let's imagine that 13 children could be in a classroom maybe 6 feet apart. And on A day, let's imagine that we have 10 students enrolled. And on B day, we have 9 students enrolled. That's 19 students. We could not put those 19 students in that 3rd grade classroom 5 days a week. It would be over capacity. So I mentioned that it's district-wide, approximately half of the classrooms would be over capacity if we were trying to do 5 days a week right now. I'm also breaking it down for you a little bit. Park is almost exactly half of their classrooms would be over capacity. At Meadowview, it's about 2/3 of the classrooms. And at Woodview and at GMS, it's about 3/4 of the classrooms would already be over capacity, and again, in some cases, significantly over capacity if we were trying to do 5 days a week right now. And then the other 3 schools are fewer, fewer than half, but there are many. Slide please. So, now we've talked a little bit about what our classrooms look like, what our capacities are. So the question comes, well, there are indeed some other school districts that have gone to 5 full days a week of learning. And there are some private schools that have done that, and we've all listened to people talk about that. So I want to give you some information about that. I've been doing surveying, talking with my colleagues, talking with my neighbors, and here's what I've learned. We're going to start just by talking about public school districts. In Lake County, there's a handful, I believe there's 6 school districts that are doing 5 days of 5 full days. Of those 6, half of them, 3, have waiting lists. In fact, one of the schools that a parent talked about tonight is one of those school districts. So they figured out what their capacity was at 6 feet distances. They accepted students for 5 days a week, as many as they could take, and the rest went on a waiting list. And there are students in that school district, actually 3 school districts, I believe, where the families want them to be on site, but they are instead remote because there's no room for them, so that there could be 5 day a week on-site learning for other students. So that's how some school districts are doing it. There's another group of students, I think it's 3, that have stated that yes, they are using 6 foot distances, and they have room in their schools to have all of their students, and they don't have to have a waiting list, which is outstanding, and is a position that we certainly wish we were in, but as evidenced in the last slide that I shared with you, we most definitely are not. Then there are private schools that are not adhering to 6-foot distances at all. They just aren't. They're not required to, they're not, under the guidance of Illinois State Board of Education, and they're not adhering to 6-foot distances, so that's how they're able to do that. And then I will share with you, again, this is under the heading of late breaking news, as recently as this week, one Lake County school district, one of the school districts on the eastern side of Lake County, has announced that they're planning to go to 5-day-a-week school later in the spring. And they won't be adhering to 6-foot distances. In that school district, all of their educators have already had 2 vaccines. They were able to work out a plan with Walgreens to do that. And it was something that was not open to our school district. And also, they are purchasing the Shield test. So the Shield test, you may have read about it, you may have heard about it, it's what Eli has been using. It's that spit test, right, when you spit into a cup. And so they are purchasing those so that all staff and all students on site will go through that screening, because it's asymptomatic testing, a few times a week. That test comes at a price of $20 a test. So I'm just doing a little fast math for you. If we were to do that 3 times a week, so that's $60 a person. If every one of our staff members and every one of our students did that, and we at $60 a head, that would bring us to, the cost of that would be over $235,000 a week, nearly $3 million between now and the end of the school year. So I did really want to share that information with you because people keep asking how are places able to do it. I want you to have the answer to that question. We continue to be very, very open to learning from our neighbors. So it's very important that you hear that. The learning never stops in our school district. We are always working to improve and learn from those around us. Those are the things that we've learned thus far. Before we go on to our next slide, I also want to state this about the 6-foot distances. And this again came from Lake County Health Department this morning. They get a lot of phone calls, they get a lot of emails from parents. And I'm not in any way suggesting it's specifically our parents. This is through, I know parents throughout Lake County. And one of the things they said is they get a lot of phone calls and emails saying, please dump that 6-foot distance, that's ridiculous. And they get a lot of requests, please keep it. Families that have their children on site, and the reason that they are comfortable or going to be on site, and the reason that they're comfortable doing it is because of the 6-foot distance. So I wanted to share that piece with you as well. Slide, please. So how are we moving forward? Well, you know, our current planning priority, and I'm sure you can't be surprised, is next week and the week beyond. The 2 weeks where we have our students coming back on site. So our highest priority right now is safely and successfully starting hybrid learning next week, while also continuing to give positive experiences for our 49% of our students who will be remote learners. We cannot forget nearly half of our students who are going to be continuing to learn remotely because parents are asking for that. Once we have gotten our students back on site in that way, we will be going back to our planning for summer programming. And we have begun that process. We are begun talking about what we can do for our students this summer to support them and continue their learning. And we will be continuing robust planning for 2021, 2022, again, with our goal being 5 full days of school if we are able to do that. Slide, please. So what would allow us to have those 5 full days of on-site learning? Well, the most obvious answer is the lifting of those 6-foot distance requirements. What would bring us there? Again, it's about the guidance that we receive, potentially that guidance could be changed because of vaccines. If communities are led to that 80% herd immunity that we keep hearing about, it's possible we could get revised guidance. Continue dropping the metrics could lead to that guidance. Ongoing research, I mean, we keep talking about following the science. The current recommendations that we receive are about 6-foot distances. Yes, there are studies out there about having learning go on without those 6-foot distances, but that's not been the recommendation that we've gotten from health professionals. But potentially that ongoing research could result in changes from the health professionals. So that could lead us to 5 full days of on-site learning potentially. If we continue to only have 51% of students on site next year, and we plan for it that way, it is possible that we could look at having 5 full days of on-site learning. I say that with a whole lot of caveat though, because that requires the right grade levels at the right schools with the perfect ratios. Because again, I lead us back to what I was sharing earlier, that even though right now we only have 51% of our students on site, half of our classrooms are already over capacity. We have other classrooms and other grades and other schools that are under capacity, but many of them are over. Or our school board could direct us to go to that waitlist program, where some families that want on-site could have 5 days on-site. Other families that want on-site would be able to be on-site as well. As again, we've talked about, has happened in some other school districts. And then I wanted to share that these are the same circumstances and strategies that would bring us back to full day kindergarten. So I'm going to roll us way back to the summer as a reminder that we went to half day K, not because we wanted to, but because we knew we needed to for when we would be back on site, and that has indeed proven to be true. We don't have enough teachers and we don't have enough space on site to have full day K for our students while that 6-foot distancing is in place. Next slide, please. I'm ending with the slide that I had at the beginning. This isn't an accident, this isn't a mistake, it's purposeful. Because I wanted everyone to yet again see that this is our goal. We are so eager, we're eager for our students to come back next week, those who have selected it, and everybody wants the safety to be in place for us to have our students back 5 full days on site. We will keep planning for a variety of possibilities, and we'll be sharing information as it continues to develop. And I believe my last slide is just again my very first slide, an opportunity for you to ask me any questions for.
Kristen, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I'm curious because, and we've talked about this a few times, I very much appreciate the desire to have students back on site 5 days, and thank you for bringing us back to the full day kindergarten. That remains a priority, I think, for everyone too. I also want to just remind everyone that the National COVID-19 Outdoor Learning Initiative is something that's been adopted by many districts. In fact, the Research Triangle, Duke, and UNC, I think, and another school have been studying transmission rates, and they've been able to bring kids back on site by using outdoor spaces. And I've said this before, but that group, the National COVID-19 Outdoor Learning Initiative, has a group of over 50 landscape designers who for free will come and do an assessment of a district's outdoor spaces. And this has been done pretty successfully in Mateo County School District in California, and then also Boulder Valley School District in Colorado, which is larger than our district. And they've had some really good success with that. One of the things that we have to think about is looking at the 5 points of coats, hats, mittens, boots as infrastructure, and that would require an expenditure. But that has made it possible for kids to come back and when I talked with with their sustainability coordinator, she was quick to point that infrastructure need out, but she was also quick to point out that all of the metrics, everything points to well-ventilated spaces and they're as a place where kids and teachers can learn safely. And we have examples of that in our community. Great Crossing has outdoor learning initiatives and there's Nature Walk Montessori right around Lake has been in person since the beginning of the year as well because they use their outdoor spaces. So I don't know the logistics of that. I don't want to pretend to know that. I don't know if that's an option for us, but I think it would be interesting to learn more about that to see if we can bring kids back and use those spaces because we certainly have invested heavily as a community in bike paths and green spaces and it would fit well with the sustainability initiative too. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Stratton.
I don't have questions. I appreciate all the information and background. I don't have any questions, but thank you, Dr. Wilson.
I assume that's it for the new staffing plan?
Yep. We're next, Mr. Walker.
Thank you, everybody. So about this time every year, we start to take a look at our numbers and projections, student projections for next year, so that we can start beginning our staffing plan. So I want to walk you through the process that we go through, the recommendations for next year, and then summarize it. So slide, please. Slide. And I'd like to thank Dr. Davis as many of the changes that have come in, she already went over. Great complaint, so I'm going to summarize those again. But just so you are aware of the process, every year, in order to project our student numbers, we take this year's numbers and roll them up to the next grade level. With pre-K and kindergarten staying the same, because those are two unknowns. We don't exactly know how many kindergartners are out there, or pre-Kers may be coming in through the child find process. So what we would take is we take the 2021 kindergartners, roll them up to the 21-22 first grade. 2021 first grade, move them up to the 21-22 second grade, and so on and so forth. So we just kind of anticipate that our students are going to stay with us, and sometimes we have students leave us, but oftentimes we have students move in as well. And then also, when we take a look at our process, I wanted to review that many years ago, the board had set parameters of kindergarten through second grade class sizes of 25 students, up to 25 students, and then third through eighth grade up to 30 students. Every year, I'll review all the data with Dr. Diaz in the EL department. And then we also have scheduling meetings with the building principals. This year, I have not been able to meet with every building principal. To be honest, they are working right now at getting students in the building. We've had preliminary meetings with them. If there's going to be a change in their building, they've been made aware of it, but I've not sat down with each one of them. As we move forward, we will continue to review. Slide, please. Thank you, Chris. So on this slide, this has all of our student enrollment. The numbers that you see underneath each school, those are projected for next school year. On the far right, that last column is what we projected back in 1920 to have this year in 2021. And then the second to last column is our current numbers. So those are the numbers. That second to last column is actually the numbers we'd be going on this year to project for next year. One of the things that I'd like to point out is that in 6 of our 9 grade levels, we were spot on. We had 3 grade levels that didn't come out where they should. Those being pre-K, K, and 3rd grade, which 3rd grade, we're not quite sure. We were off, I was off by 20 students there. But when I started speaking with a couple of our building principals regarding kindergarten, they said that at the beginning of the year, there were many parents who did enroll and then unenrolled as we started getting closer to the start of the school year. And I'll talk about it on the next slide of kindergarten, and I'll show you some of our historical numbers. But it was a programmatic change, as Dr. Whitman mentioned earlier, going from our full-day kindergarten program to our half-day remote program. I also spoke with Heather Lorenzo, who's in charge of our Pupil Services Department, regarding our pre-K numbers. And I'll elaborate a little bit more on that, but that process, every year, pre-K starts out with a lower number of students, and as the year goes by, through child fine thinking, more students begin to enroll as they go through and reach the age that they can be in school. Slide, please. So like I mentioned just a second ago, pre-K typically starts out with lower numbers and then increases with screening. Right now, we have 19 students who are on the waiting list, but at this time are choosing not to enroll. So that puts our numbers like just where we were going. So we got back, are getting back towards the number that we projected. And when we take a look at kindergarten in this chart, if you go back to the January 17-18, we had 330 students enrolled. That was a kindergarten program that was half-day kindergarten, full-day was tuition based. In 18-19, we converted to, that was the year that we switched over to full-day tuition-free kindergarten. And as you can see, we saw an increase in numbers there by 15. The year after, 19-20, we saw another increase of 15 students. And then, of course, this year we saw a dramatic drop. I don't foresee that drop moving on to 1st grade. We all know that some of our students may have gone off to private kindergarten classes. We anticipate them coming back for 1st grade. So, this is very difficult as we start projecting what our staffing needs may be, is that our drop in kindergarten this year will then be our 1st graders next year. And so we're trying to balance where are we and how many students are going to be coming back. And so, slide please. Thank you. And so after a lot of discussions, what we had, and taking a look at some of our current numbers across the district, when we take a look at classes, we balance the parameters versus how many students are in there, and then we say, okay, how many students are we short of that? And if we're, Avon Center School, 1st grade, it is a very low amount of students, then we may say, okay, do we need to RIF a staff member across the district to make, to minimize some of the impact? After balancing all of our classes, we don't see a dramatic drop in one particular building. We see a couple students here and a couple students there. Our biggest area would be kindergarten. That's That comes out to about 4 students across 4 buildings. So it's kind of, it's not a huge drop, but it is a drop. And then when we take a look at this for staffing, if you see the green column on the right-hand side, we have an increase of 3 teachers at kindergarten level. That would be, as Dr. D has mentioned earlier, the increase of one-way bilingual program at Park would be Meadowview. We see a negative half position at Prairie View. Then we're going to increase a half at second grade in Prairie View, because that's going to be, as Dr. D has mentioned, we're going to split that multi-age group up because of the number. Then we have a large number at another building, so we would have to possibly have a staff member there. And then we follow some of the cohorts, some of the smaller cohorts. Park campus has a very small 3rd grade class this year. We've been following them since they enrolled in kindergarten. And moving on to 4th grade next year, but this year's 4th grade group at Park campus is larger. So it's kind of, you're going to move a teacher each year, might have to balance that up. And then you'll see also an additional 7th grade teacher, and that's going to be that Iowa teacher at GeoMates. Slide, please. As far as encores and EL go, we don't anticipate any changes there. The only changes we would see, EL would be in the bilingual portion of there, which I know. Slide, please. So to summarize it, we saw a decline in enrollment this year, specifically in the pre-K through K. And that we believe that would be due to our programmatic changes. We also know that some of our students have enrolled in private schools in order to attend in person. Our bilingual, we know that is going to be changing next year due to the audit in school code. So we will have to add those 5 positions. And then last year, we began to budget, not hire, but budget positions in reserve. And this is in case we have a fluctuation, an increase in enrollment in the building, that we don't have to come back to the board and say, we need another position here. We've already budgeted for this, so we can go ahead. Doesn't impact the total overall budget. And we did that last year. That was the first time we did it, and we did need to utilize 2 of those positions. We had an influx in 4th grade at Prairie View, and then we also hired a certified teacher to help alleviate some larger class sizes in 2 grades. So that is our projections and anticipated staffing. Now, it is subject to change as we move forward and we continue to see enrollment patterns. So, any questions?
Stephen, any questions?
I do not know.
Mr. Miller, do you have any questions?
No, nope, nothing. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
All right, then we will move right from there into student fees for next school year. So, who's the first slide? All right. So this, I believe, will be quick. Per board policy, the district is authorized to collect student fees for the use of textbooks, consumable materials, extracurricular activities, technology, and other student fees. Each year in advance of registration, the Board of Education is to approve the fee structure for the upcoming school year. So we have just a few recommendations to share with you. The first is the addition of the $50 tech fee for grades K through 2. So you may remember that we have this fee for technology services for grades 3 through 8. That began when we purchased Chromebooks for those grades. Up until this year, we haven't had Chromebooks in grades K through 2. As you all know well, we did purchase them this year for our K through 2 students. We didn't go back and institute a $50 fee for those students this year, but the recommendation we're making moving forward is to include that fee for our K through 2 students along with our 3-8 students. Aside from that, there would be no other fee increases, just like last year, we didn't do any fee increases. And we were recommending a continuation of our $25 early bird discount. I'll show you what that looks like in a moment, but the concept being, we certainly want people to enroll and pay their fees as early as possible because it is so important and helpful for our staffing and our planning. And so we like to incentivize people by giving them a discount when they do that. That discount had been June 8th. You may remember that last summer we pushed that discount forward to July 15th. I don't know if you say that's forward or backward, but you get the point, to July 15th, due to the impact of COVID. And we're recommending that we continue with July 15th early bird discount in 2021. Slide, please. And then here is just a chart of what it looks like. You can see on the left side, we have the early bird discount, so it's $25 less than what it would be after July 15th. And then each of those has a column for what the current fees are and what we're proposing for the next year. And again, the only change is an additional $50 for kindergarten, first and second grade due to the Chromebooks and all of the additional technology that it costs that are related to those Chromebooks, subscriptions and all of that. And that is it. Any questions from the board? All right, well then we'll be bringing this to you again next week. No, the next board meeting as an action item. And that brings us to our very last presentation of the evening, which is me again, but no slides for this one. We're going to be talking about the calendar. But board, you've all had an opportunity to review the fiscal year 2021-2022 calendar draft. And I'm just going to talk with you a little bit about how that was created and kind of what the parameters were and where we landed. So the calendar was drafted, as it always is, as a collaborative effort between administration and the leaders of our two unions. And as always the case, efforts were made to align the calendar to the calendar of Grace Lake High School District 127 to the extent possible for the needs of our families. The school year would begin on Tuesday, August 17th. And the 17th and the 18th, not student days, those would be institute days for our teachers. Thursday, August 19th is the first day for students in grades 1 through 8. The next day, Friday the 20th, would be the first day for kindergarten. Moving into the next week, on Monday the 23rd, would be the first day for pre-K, or early childhood center. Rolling away at the end of the school year, our last day of the school year, including all of the days that instruction that we need to have, would bring us to Wednesday, June 1st, for the last day of school, if no emergency days are used, with June 8th being the last possible day of school. As in the past, there would be no school at all for students during, no student attendance during the week of Thanksgiving, although there will be fall student conferences on November 22nd and 23rd. Winter break, just like over at the high school district, would begin on Monday, December 20th, with school resuming on January 3rd. Spring break, also like the high school, the week of March 28th. But I do want to note, this is a difference from the high school, that the week before March 28th, Thursday, March 24th, would be a half day of school for students, with no school on March 25th, and those would be due to spring conferences, which is what we've done traditionally. School, excuse me, will be closed on the following legal holidays: Labor Day, Thanksgiving Day, Martin Luther King Day, President's Day, and Memorial Day. And then there's October 11th, which is the day that we would be closed, and the day that we have traditionally called Columbus Day. And as maybe you expected to hear us start talking about, we are recommending that we don't call it Columbus Day, but instead call it Indigenous Peoples Day, in order to recognize the impact of colonialism on Native communities, celebrate the diverse cultures, contributions, and resilience of Native peoples. So still a day off of school, but the reason for taking that day off of school would be different. And that's all of the change or in the parameters of our calendar, which we'll bring back to you at the next board meeting for a vote. But of course, certainly we want to know if you have any questions at this time. And comments. Actually, I do need to know what you think about Indigenous Peoples Day, because it's going to show up on the calendar unless you tell us otherwise.
No, thank you for sharing the changes in the calendar, Dr. Wilson, I appreciate that. I think it's an important change for our district, our community, to recognize Indigenous People Day, and I'll be full support of that.
Steve Stratt?
I concur with Dr. Mack just said.
You know what, Jim, I lost connectivity, so I don't know, I heard my name, but I'm not sure are you asking me a question, or?
Just asking you get comments on the calendar.
No, not at this point, thanks.
All right, keep looking up the All right, so that concludes the 2021 plan. Part of the evening. The next topic is topics for future agenda items. I do have a request from Christy Graydon. Stated that she attended a very informative ed session on how to advocate for the legislators, and she'd like us to explore this as a board. The resulting action could be scheduling some meetings with our local legislators to comprise the needs of the challenges of our district, to create a more formal list of legislative priorities, to have an actual, and then to have an actual legislative committee. So she would like that to be put on a future board meeting agenda, so we can get on, in the next couple of board meetings, that'd be great. I know we have talked to our local legislators in the past when we advocated for the change in funding, when school districts are funded, increased revenues to our districts. We sat down with State England and Bush, and I've also had conversations with Northern Bush regarding the grant program that comes from the state for legal property. So I know we worked with them in the past, and we can work in the future. So I support Christie's request to put that on the Christie, do you have anything you need to add to the agenda or the agenda? All right, Stephen? Correct?
Nope.
Okay. Any other items on that?
Yeah, I do have a few. So first of all, just to clarify, since Christy Braden would be, I think, kind of guiding conversation about that topic, shall I just, we'll reach out to her and see if she wants that for the next board meeting? If she does, we'll do it, but no, okay. So we'll be bringing back student fees as an action item. We'll be bringing back the school calendar as an action item. And there will be one other, action item, which will be coming from our interim CSBOs. Excuse me, and I'm not sure if it will be an action item or not, now that I think about it, it may be in business. But it would be the recommendation for a new audit firm for us to use effective with the fiscal year 21. So they'll be bringing that forth. And that is all I have for the next meeting.
Okay. Then we're back to our second round of public comments.
Yeah, we do have some, there's just a few. Mr. Lewis, you did a wonderful job before. Let's read these. Are you here?
Thank you for that compliment, I guess. So again, I apologize if I mispronounced someone's name. So we do have a few. The first one is from Jamie McGann. I would like to thank the school board, school district 46 leadership team and DOE, Board of Education, for the decisions they have made to keep the students safe, staff, and district safe. Pardon me. I feel you have taken the CDC guidelines, ISBE, and the regional office of Lake County into consideration when making their decisions. This has been difficult for all of us. We cannot take into account the 300+ days that the parents are speaking about. Last year was a completely different situation. We can only take into consideration this year alone. Yes, we are all struggling. Yes, this is hard. Yes, my own children are having a hard time. The community is struggling. We are divided and really need to come together. The new rules through Lake County stated community spread. I find it very hard to see online people, not just in our community, going out, going on vacations, gathering in large gatherings, and social situations maskless. Based on the wording, community spread, we need to ensure that we are all safe, not just in school, but throughout the community. This year has been a trying year, a year of struggles and learning for everyone. Rules change all the time, and districts are adapting as quickly as possible. This is the plan for this year, and the plan for next year is most likely being discussed and worked on. This is not an easy planning process. We also have to take into account the new variant and the unknown of that. The next one is from Melissa Sinison. The board and superintendent need to put a plan together that is not fear-based, a plan that is based on the needs of the children. Please provide this to parents before spring break. You have had over 10 months to plan and keep changing goalposts. Please look at surrounding schools that are thriving. Use them as an example of what we can do so our children can thrive and not fail. This next one is from Ann Dunn. I want to first and foremost thank the teachers of District 46. My children's teachers have done an impressive job given the circumstances, and it is clear that they are working harder than ever before. Secondly, I'm asking the board to prioritize a plan for getting our children back to school full time. While I realize there are still unknowns related to the pandemic and that school will look different for months to come, I also feel families need to have the confidence that our children will be back in school full time. I have had the unique opportunity to see various private schools operate in person 5 days a week this school year. I acknowledge there are obvious differences between opening the doors for a private school versus public schools, but I also cannot ignore the reality that these students are thriving. As a district and community, we need to applaud the hard work of our teachers and administrators to help our students find success in a remote setting, but also embrace the reality that this model is not sustainable if we truly want our students to find success at both the academic and social emotional levels. I encourage the board to work with administrators and the teachers union collaboratively in an effort to develop a proactive plan to safely get our students back full-time. Thank you. This next one is from Rebecca Limones. Many schools in the area and across the country have returned to school successfully. As a tax-paying citizen of Grace Lake, I would like to understand the plan forward to get all students who choose to return back in person full-time. There seems to be a lot of fear and no action by the board with no concrete plans for families to understand. The mental health of children in this community are at risk, and it appears to be about what the union wants versus the needs of children. Those were the submitted comments so far.
Thank you. Any people?
I have no comment.
Okay. Ashley Mahoney? Can you make sure that green lights are okay?
Hold on.
So I would like to say first, thank you to the teachers because I agree with one of the former comments that they're doing the best they can with a not great situation. But I have been asking of you since October, stood in front of you back in October multiple times. I have commented online over the past 3 months. I have written, I don't know how many emails, but we need to do what's best for all of our children. And I don't think we're doing it. I'm happy that they're going to school next week. My children's faces are lit up more in the last week as they plan for next week than they have been in months. And so the thought of being in the building is changing their demeanor. 2 days isn't good enough for my second grader, and 2.5 hours is not good enough for my kindergartner. What we are doing with hybrid is a Band-Aid to fix a not good situation. Our teachers are vaccinated or getting vaccinated. We should be moving forward. That is what is best for our kids. Study after study is showing that children should be in schools. Across the country, we're seeing it. In surrounding areas, we're seeing it. Our kids, our children in this community are falling behind others. We cannot continue this for another year. I have been going to teach my students in person since September. And when my child cries and says, why do you get to go to school and I don't? What would you suggest I say to him as the tears are coming down his cheeks? We can do better. I personally commented in the last meeting about why not look at the other schools that are making it work, why reinvent the wheel. And I'm so happy to hear that it sounds like that was done. And I don't think that was done before. But I also don't want to hear only the excuses on why they can do it and we cannot. I know that this district and this community can do better than what we are doing right now for our children. And again, I think that most people are doing the best they can. They are trying, but I beg of you to start having a better plan moving forward into next fall. At the very least, our youngest and our most vulnerable learners need to be put first and need to be in school 5 full days. Successful schools have already been planning. They're being proactive and not reactive. Then they make adjustments. We need to start that. So I have a few questions about planning. Is the planning taking place for 5 full days, or are we still planning for hybrid because we have 6-foot distances or we have too many kids? We need to have a full day plan. Classes and teachers could be scheduled for the people that choose remote versus those that want in person. Making adjustments to the spaces that we have, using the lunchroom for PE and the gym space for classrooms and have children eat in their classrooms. Hire more staff,
lunch monitors to relieve the teachers, because they do need their break, they shouldn't be monitoring a lunch. We were given special federal monies because of COVID. What are we using it for? We could be hiring extra staff. And is the 6 foot a requirement or a recommendation? Because I heard it spoken of both ways. And if we're masked and we're facing one direction in our desks, there should be a little bit of wiggle room. And lastly, we talked about the numbers for planning of next year. And your job must have been very difficult this year because of the changes and the amount of people that are pulling their kids from public school. But the problem is not everyone in this community can do that. Not everyone has that privilege. So those families are sitting back, waiting, hoping for something that can help their kids succeed. So again, you've heard from me enough. You've heard from me so many times. But we have to keep pushing forward. So I beg of you, spend your time and your money coming up with a full day plan, not a mission statement or what we're doing in 5 years. I would love that to be what we can focus on right now. But we need to focus on the next 5 months. Thank you.
If you can sum up your name and email address on the list first, please. Just a record.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Yep. I'm Kevin Strucker, a UPS driver for a lot of you. I want to say I'm not as eloquent of a speaker as many before me. I appreciate all the hard work that the teachers and some of the board have been putting to make this a priority. Not only am I a UPS driver, but I'm also a father of 4 people currently that's in the district: an 8th grader, a 5th grader, a 2nd grader, and a kindergarten. I would echo the same request that others have, that 5 days are very important. We need to figure out how to make it work and how to be proactive instead of reactive. The idea that what's gone on in the last year with the e-learning, I would say that that's more of a Band-Aid, that the learning and the science behind how many hours a kid sits in front of a computer, that's more negative than them being in person. I think what we're doing is not enough. And every day, all the teachers, and I've heard comments that they feel like they'll be on the front line. If that's how they truly feel, then find a different profession. Because I think that's an insult to all the healthcare workers, all the providers, UPS drivers, they have to deliver them from work every day. Vaccinated or not, as long as you're following 3 W's, watching your distance, wearing a mask, washing your hands, I don't think that we're going to become super spreaders. But education, these years, as adults, it's just a year that we're postponing. But as a kindergartner, you'll never get that year back. 2nd grader, they're not going to get a repeat. If you're a 2nd grade teacher, you'll have another 2nd grade class. So I think we're doing our community a disservice by not moving forward and trying to help their education. Because as they fall behind, I've seen parents in the community spending a lot of extra money on tutors and trying to get our kids caught up. And unfortunately, I don't even think that's enough. So I think at some point, whether it be the school board or as a community, if the schools can't figure out how to do that, then we need to figure out how to figure out some kind of voucher system so that the parents can go and find a school that is willing to. I think that message needs to start coming across, like, please, we support you, we want you guys to do your job safely and efficiently, but if you're not willing to, put it back in our hands. Thank you.
Yeah, there's one more on, was there anybody else? Okay, yeah, one more online, and, I'm hoping I'm reading the right thing, I'm just gonna clarify that, there was a little bit of confusion about something that was submitted. We had to request, permission to get access to the document, so hopefully I'm about to read the correct document. And so this is from, Susan Kordak, who wrote, as a D46 taxpayer and employee, I feel the board and district need to be transparent with their plan for proper PPE supplies and ventilation in buildings. Regarding ventilation, the CDC has several recommendations for non-residential buildings such as schools. For example, running HVAC systems at maximum outside airflow for 2 hours before the building is occupied, open windows when possible, use correctly positioned fans to increase effectiveness of open windows, adding portable HEPA fan filter systems, and decrease occupancy in areas where outdoor ventilation cannot be increased. How is the district addressing ventilation issues to protect its staff? In regards to PPE, the N95, KN95, or 2 layers of masks are reported to be the best protection. The hand sanitizer units will be used much more than their intended purpose when originally installed. Therefore, staff should be provided with the individual container at their desk, so the school units are not shared among students and staff. How is the district addressing PPE hand sanitizer issues to protect its staff? The president has said that science-based health guidelines for reopening schools will likely be presented this week. The staff needs to be protected at the minimum by those guidelines. This is not just a health safety issue, it is an ethical problem as well. Staff simply want as safe of an environment as possible based on CDC recommendations and science for themselves and their students. Other school districts are doing this. What is D46 doing? That was it. The end of that letter.
Okay, thank you. So that is the end of public comments. We do not have a closed session meeting tonight, so the next thing up is a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second.
Miller?
Aye.
Matt?
Aye.
Zach?
Aye.
And me.
Aye. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you for everybody for the comments.